Jai Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Mata. So I'll start off with the Mangalacharan prayers, and then hopefully more devotees will join and we can get started. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatnam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataru Bhayascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Matsamo nasti papatma naparadhi cha kaschana parihare pilajjame kimbruve purushottama. Bhumao yuvatinam yatayuni yunau cha yuvatau yata manobhi ramate tadvan manome ramatam tvai. Bhumau skalita padhanam Bhumirevavalambanam Tvai jata paradhanam Tvameva sharanam prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hey, there is Anushri, there is Rupali Mataji, Ram Babu Prabhu, Sarvanan, Naveen and Preeti. So happy to see you all. And is Krishangi Mataji behind? Or who's the... So last week, we stopped at chapter 9. We did the 64 items, and from the 64 items, Srila Rupa Goswami gives evidences from scriptures as to what those 64 items are. We completed till chapter 10, or rather we completed chapter 8, and chapter 9 and 10 is something that we were planning to study at home. Then if there were any questions on chapter 9 and 10, we can take those up now, or in general other questions from the Nectar of Devotion thus far before we get into the further chapters. Any questions or comments or concerns? Madhav, Prem Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhu, in chapter 9, I have one question. In the bowing down in honor of the deity section.
Let me share the screen. Yes, Prabhu.
So in the section bowing down in honor of the deity. So in the last statement, it said the person, actually the from however, the person who has once offered respects bowing down before the deity will not come back to this world because he will go directly to the abode of Krishna. So Prabhu, can you elaborate on this statement a bit more?
So there, as Srila Rupa Goswami writes from different scriptures, we get some statements that are true, but yet seems little unbelievable. However, the person who has once offered respects, bowing down before the deity, will not come back to this world because he will directly go to the abode of Krishna. Will not come back to this world and go back to abode of Krishna can happen immediately, or there could be some time before it happens. When they say this world, it can either mean this planet or this universe, or it could be another universe as well. So we all offer the deity or obeisances to the deity at least once. It actually starts the process of devotional service, and one has no need to fear that this bowing down before deity was in vain. So in that statement, we do have, even if one chants the name of Krishna, millions of sins are destroyed. So you can see, even though one has a little faith, then one gets bhava. That's another statement. So statements like these are not untrue, but based on one's own inclination as well. So for example, if I offer obeisance to deity once, but my tendencies are still deeply rooted in matter, it will take some time before that becomes effective. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, that helps. Actually, that was my question, like that there could be someone who has material desires remaining, and what happens to those desires if they go back?
Yeah, so Krishna is the way the perfection or going back happens when one is completely cleansed. In fact, it is mentioned even a trace of material desires. If they are, until they are cleansed, one cannot go back. We can also use the word, so that bowing down before deity is not in vain, and it will actually help the person progress. So that is the meaning of this. I hope that's okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Because what happens is we make use of these statements, and then people will say, anyway, I'm going back, so it really doesn't matter. So for example, I can, when we use our intellect in a very mistaken way, well, I don't need to chant 16 rounds. Where is it? Because it's mentioned already. I just bow down once before the Lord, I'm done. But we can see that in the life of Maharaj Bharat, who became so advanced in devotional service that he reached the level of bhav, but the attachment to a small deer actually made him take the birth of a deer in the next life, right? So you can juxtapose these two to say that there is the personal aspect of devotional service as well that the devotee has to put in.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Other questions? Let's see. I'll open the. Does anybody raise their hand? All right. So, Anushri, can you keep track of Who wants to read?
Yeah, sure.
All right. We still are taking questions before. But then, any other points that we have? So one more item, interesting item I wanted to comment on. There are many places like this, circumambulating the temple of Vishnu. So we can see on the screen about how the efficacy of circumambulating the temple of Vishnu happens. But in many of the temples, at least in the West, there is no provision for circumambulating the temple, or at least the deity. In the temple in India, there is a passage between the front of the deity and the back of the deity. There is a passage where you can actually circumambulate. So a couple of items. One is you can mentally circumambulate the deity. And the second way is to actually go around the block or go around the temple if possible. So it's one and the same. So just wanted to add that. Sometimes it can be a little concerning that you have so many rules and regulations, but Srila Rupa Goswami in the end gives the 5 important, and we'll get to that in a minute. Any other questions? Right. Okay, so let's go on to, if there are no other questions. Anushri, also please make sure that if somebody raised their hand, you kindly point, because my screen might not show always the raised hand. So let's go to servitorship. So for those who are keeping track, in chapter 11, which is the servitorship, one exercise you might want to do when you are reading is that you can see servitorship. You can, if somebody is keeping track, on page 56 of this book, right, on this book, we see the list of 64 items of devotional service, and we can keep track as we read this servitorship constitutes which item. So let me see. Am I making sense? Right, so we have these items here, 64 items. So from the next chapter onwards, Srila Rupa Goswami gives the different evidences from scriptures. So here you can see this item 27 corresponds to this one that we are starting now. So chapter 11 starts from servitorship. And then you can see under the next heading, devotional service and friendship. And you can go to chapter, this should be 28. So it'll be a fun exercise to keep track of which number corresponds to this. And you can see here, the next one is surrendering everything to the Lord. And here it is, one should offer everything to the Lord. So you can see how these items are being tracked here. So far, so good. Any questions? All right. Let's go ahead. Anushri, maybe you can do the first 2 paragraphs, and then those who want to read can start typing in, and Anushri can call.
Yeah, sure. Servitorship. In the opinion of the karmis, fruit of workers, offering the results of karma is called servitorship. But according to Vaishnava acharyas like Rupa Goswami, servitorship means constant engagement in some kind of service to the Lord. In the Skanda Puran, it is said that those who are attached to ritualistic activities, the 4 orders of social life, and the 4 orders of spiritual life, are called devotees, considered devotees. But when devotees are actually engaged in offering service to the Lord directly, they must be Bhagavats, or pure devotees. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities or prescribed duties according to the four orders of social and spiritual life are not actually pure devotees, but still, they are offering the result to the Lord. They are accepted as devotees. When one has no such desire, but acts spontaneously out of love of God, such a person must be accepted as a pure devotee. The conditioned souls who have come to contact with the material world are all more or less desirous of lording it over material nature. The system of varnashram and prescribed duties under this system are so designed that the conditioned soul may enjoy in the material world according to his desire for sense gratification, and at the same time gradually become elevated to spiritual understanding. Under these prescribed duties of varna and ashram, there are many activities which belong to devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those devotees who are householders accept Vedic ritualistic performances, as well as the prescribed duties of devotional service, but because both are meant for satisfying Krishna. When householder devotees perform some Vedic ritualistic duties, they do so to satisfy Krishna. As we have previously discussed, any activity aiming at satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is considered devotional service. Next, Manisha can read.
Okay, Manisha, you can do next two verses. Paragraph.
Okay. Srila Rupa Goswami describes one who is fit for becoming engaged in devotional service. He says that persons who are neophytes and who have developed a little love of Godhead are not interested in the activities of sense gratification in proportion to their devotion. But if there is still some attraction for sense gratifying activities, then the results of such activities should be offered to Krishna. This is also called engagement in the service of the Lord, with the Lord as the master and the worker as the servant. In the Naradiya Purana, there is a statement of how the servitorship is transcendental. It is said there that a person who is constantly engaged in devotional service by his body, mind, and words, or even a person who is not practically engaged but is simply desiring to be so, is considered to be liberated.
Thank you.
Next, Ishwari Radha Mataji, then Kripatita Mataji.
I'll just add some comments here, and then So one point is, I think there is great hope in these two paragraphs. Oftentimes, we get confused between am I doing bhakti or am I doing bhukti? Bhukti is material enjoyment and bhakti is devotional service to Krishna. So here, one of the most encouraging statements Srila Prabhupada gives here is this: even a person who is not practically engaged but is simply desiring to be so. So on one level, our engagement might not be the highest, but that shouldn't discourage us. But our intention should always be the highest. And when we have that intent in place, it's just a matter of time before we realize that intent. But if the intent to start with is not in the high place, then our end result might not match. So let's keep our intention, whatever is there in the books, because oftentimes we get discouraged. This is so much of stuff here to read or to follow or to practice. In the modern context, we barely have time to do that, let alone follow 2 or 3 principles of devotion, what to speak of 64. We keep our intention the high, even though we might not get the platform on which to act on those intentions. And that yearning, that crying out for that platform is what is going to attract the mercy of Krishna, and he can provide that platform, provided my intention is correct. So, okay, there any questions, any comments? Okay, we have a few other devotees who joined. So welcome Divyangi, Mataji, Tarachan, Ryan, Deepika, Jim, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Very well. All right. So we can read more. I'll skip one or two as we kind of progress. So devotional service and friendship is really nice. So let's discuss this. So first two paragraphs, please, and then.
Hey, Bo. Ishwari Radha Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri.
Harival Mata, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Devotional service in friendship. Devotional service in friendship can be divided into two categories. The first is to act as the confidential servant of the Lord, and the other is to act as the well-wisher of the Lord. The devotee who has confidence in devotional service to the Lord systematically follows the rules and regulations with the faith that he will achieve the platform of transcendental life. The second type of devotional friendship is to become a well-wisher of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord accepts a preacher as the most dear servant. Anyone who is preaching the confidential message of the Gita to the people in general is so dear to Krishna that no one can be equal to him in human society. In the Mahabharata, Draupadi says, "My dear Govinda, your promise is that your devotee can never be vanquished. I believe in that statement, and therefore in all kinds of tribulations, I simply remember your promise, and thus I live." The purport is that Draupadi and her 5 husbands, the Pandavas, were put into severe tribulations by their cousin brother Duryodhan, as well as by others. The tribulations were so severe that even Bhishma Dev, who was both a lifelong brahmachari and a great warrior, would sometimes shed tears thinking of them. He was always surprised that although the Pandavas were so righteous and Draupadi was practically the goddess of fortune, and although Krishna was their friend, still they had to undergo such severe tribulations. Though their tribulations were not ordinary, Draupadi was not discouraged. She knew that because Krishna was their friend, ultimately they would be saved. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And just to add to this particular statement, actually, if we go to, let's go quickly to visit the statement by Bhishma. And here, this is where it is. Here, these are the few statements that that are mentioned here. I'll just read those. Bhishma Dev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religious personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by Brahmanas, God and religion. As far as my daughter Queen Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she greatly suffered. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Oh, how wonderful is it? How wonderful is the influence of the inevitable time. It's irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion, Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas." So you can see how this is mentioned in Bhagavatam as well. Go ahead, please.
Next is Kripatita Mataji.
I can do the next 3 paragraphs, Mata.
Okay, Hare Krishna. A similar statement is there in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse 53, where Hari, the son of King Rishabha, addresses Maharaj Nimi, "My dear king, A person who never deviates even for a moment from engagement in service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, engagement which is sought even by great demigods like Indra, with firm conviction that there is nothing more worshipable or desirable than this, is called the first-class devotee. Sri Rupa Goswami says that a neophyte devotee who has simply developed a slight love of Godhead is certainly a prospective candidate for devotional service. When he becomes firmly fixed in such devotional service, that assured status becomes a confidential part of his devotional service. Sometimes it is found that a pure devotee lies down in the temple of the Lord in order to serve him as a confidential friend. Such friendly behavior of a devotee may be accepted as raganuga or spontaneous. Although according to regulatory principles, no one can lie down in the temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this spontaneous love of Godhead may be grouped under devotional service in friendship. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So it's interesting to see that there are two aspects of friendship. One is to act as a superior well-wisher. The other is more of friendship as a peer. Friendship as a well-wisher is more in terms of sadhana, where the devotee is well-wisher, and in the sense like there is a connection that in the modern context, it's more like a fan, a groupie, or something to that effect. You know, you are a well-wisher of a particular whatever rock star, sportsman, whatever. So something like that. But at the same time, as a peer, it's a little more intense. Then surrendering everything to the Lord. There are few items like this: performing all endeavors for Krishna, then being a surrendered soul, serving trees as Tulasi. Let's do this. I don't know whoever is next can do the section serving trees such as the Tulasi.
Yeah, next will be Ryan Shankar.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Serving trees such as the Tulasi. In the Skanda Puran, there is a statement praising the Tulasi tree as follows: "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Tulasi tree, which can immediately vanquish volumes of sinful activities. Simply by seeing or touching this tree, one can become relieved from all distresses and diseases. Simply by offering obeisances to and pouring water on the Tulasi tree, one can become freed from the fear of being sent to the court of Yamaraj, the king of death, who punishes the sinful. If someone sows a Tulasi tree somewhere, certainly he becomes devoted to Lord Krishna, and when that Tulasi leaves are offered in devotion at the lotus feet of Krishna, there is the full development of love of Godhead. In India, all Hindus, even those not belonging to the Vaishnava group, take special care of the Tulasi tree. Even in great cities where it is very difficult to keep a Tulasi tree, people are to be found very carefully keeping this plant. They water it and offer obeisances to it, because worship of the Tulasi tree is very important in devotional service. In the Skanda Puran, there is another statement about Tulasi as follows: Tulasi is all auspicious in all respects. Simply by seeing, simply by touching, simply by remembering, simply by praying to, simply by bowing before, simply by hearing about, or simply by sowing this tree, there is always auspiciousness. Anyone who comes in touch with the Tulasi tree in the above mentioned ways lives eternally in the Vaikuntha world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So you can see how when we do in the temple the Tulasi Puja in the morning, sometimes it might be for those who are really newcomers, unfamiliar with the ways of devotion. They might be like, what are these guys doing, worshipping a tree? Apart, trees are in the mode of ignorance, and trees are so many kind of it's bizarre or weird, but there is a the tulasi is extremely auspicious, as we read and as we all know. But just wanted to reiterate that point on the tulasi puja in the temple. Any questions before we go to the next chapter? Okay. Chapter 12. Yes. So we can do this section. Whoever is
Prabhu,
next.
I just have a question.
Oh yes, Kripati Tamataji.
I'm just wondering, because when we're going through all the 64 items, and at each section, it mentions whether it's from a particular Purana, they're quoting from. So are we expected to remember all that detail?
No.
Sorry.
No. Thank you. That's a very excellent question. No. The answer is a firm no. The reason for this is this. It is just not possible to remember all of that. And more importantly, it becomes, it is maybe possible to remember. I'm not denying that. But it just becomes a rather, at the elementary level, that's not needed. At the advanced level, probably yes. And then at the advanced level, we can also discuss the finer nuances that Srila Rupa Goswami gives one evidence from one scripture, but for one point, he might give evidences from 3 or 4 places in different scriptures to capture the more subtle nuances. So all those things won't be applicable in the exam perspective. So as I mentioned before, there is one question and one verse for memorization that will come in exam, that will be tested upon, that even if you know nothing of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, if you know that aspect, then you know of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So does anybody know what is that one verse that we are talking to about here? Ryan.
Anyabhilashita shunyam yana karmadyanavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama.
Excellent. Yes, that's the verse we are talking about. Even if we don't remember any verses, even if we don't know what we are doing here in ISKCON, if you know this one verse, then you know everything. Because this one verse is the Paribhasha Sutra, or why, the raison d'etre, as they say, on why we are here in ISKCON, very reason of our existence in ISKCON. All right. Any other questions? I can't see the raised hand, so I do implore you to unmute, because if I'm sharing the screen, then yeah. Hare Krishna, Smita Mataji, so happy to see you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Timir, nice, happy, everybody join.
Yes, Prabhuji.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, Mata.
In chapter 10, under the title meditation, they have given a story of a Brahmana who meditated on worshipping. Just mentally meditated on worshipping
Right.
a lot, and he got the benefit of the actual worship. So could you please elaborate on that?
Sure, Mata. When we talk of devotional service to Krishna, many people do many things. For example, somebody is making garlands, somebody is sweeping the temple, somebody is offering arti to the deities, somebody is actually going on the streets and distributing books, somebody is sweeping the temple floors or cooking in the kitchen. Somebody might be sitting and doing nothing, apparently nothing, but that person is thinking of God. Some other person is speaking about God. So all these activities can broadly be divided into three categories: activities of the body, activities of the words, and activities of the mind. Krishna is capable of accepting on any level, through body, through words, and through mind. So this beautiful story that is mentioned here is that we know, and just for those who have not read this story, is that a person as a Brahmana, he would not have money to worship the Lord, but mentally he would do all these things that are being mentioned here. This goes to show two things. One thing is that Krishna is satisfied even though we don't have the physical actual offerings, and he can still accept mentally. The second thing is there is no situation in the world where one cannot serve the Lord. For example, in Bhagavatam it is mentioned, Savaipam saparo dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. In the Bhagavatam first canto, second chapter, it's mentioned that that the pure devotional service to Krishna constitutes of uninterrupted and unmotivated devotional service. Now, uninterrupted, suppose I want to do puja to the Lord, but I don't have any money. I don't have the material. Sometimes in the West, it could be a common problem that we might not have tulsi. We might not have the proper ingredients. Isn't that an interrupted devotional service? The idea here is that even if one doesn't have, one can mentally offer it to Krishna and Krishna will accept. Is that okay, Rupali Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu. But I'm thinking, will that mislead some people from doing actual service?
Yes.
Because superficially it feels, oh, you don't have to do anything.
Yes. If you actually have the paraphernalia, then Krishna knows as well what you have and what you don't have. And that's kind of cheating. It's like, on a very gross level, if you invite somebody home and you have all the preparations ready, but you put some very nice kheer in an bowl, and mentally you put that in an empty bowl and give it to the guest saying that here is some kheer, then it's actually a travesty. So very nice point that you mentioned. The goal of this story was to kind of highlight the fact that devotional service cannot be stopped even if one is in utter poverty. That was the point, rather than just have it mentally, the Lord will accept. The Lord will not accept. So
what I understand, that if you have something, you should definitely offer. You should offer, but if you don't have for some reason, it should not stop you.
Without doubt. Perfect. That's a perfect understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if the audience permits, I'll share a personal story in this regard, and I hope you don't mind. I worship Shaligrams every day. Every day it's a very simple worship. It's not too complicated a worship because I work and I do other services. I wish I could elaborately do the worship, but I keep it simple according to my Siksha Guru's instructions. But there are days where I'm unable to. Maybe I'm traveling, or what could be the reason. So on those days, I try to meditate on the fact that if you bring water, it's a tap water. Of course, I mix really fragrant aromatic substances in the water to make it really beautiful for the Lord. But it's still limited to the whatever availability I have. But on those days when I am forced to do Manasa Puja or on Puja from mind, that day is the most elaborate worship. I actually, I have no restrictions. I can call the best of the Brahmanas and the best of the dancers from all over the universe to have like a magnificent dance, and the Brahmanas reciting prayer while the Lord wakes up. Then I have no restriction on the quality of materials that can be bought. I have no restriction on going to whichever Brahma Loka or Satya. It doesn't matter. I can get water from there and I can mix those waters. And we hear of the most fragrant stuff like aguru, sandalwood, and so many musk and other things. I can get from that and then offer it to, and I get like a certain joy saying that it's such an opulent worship you can exercise. So in the right spirit, actually, you transcend the physical limitation. But in the wrong spirit, then you will say, let me do it mentally every day. What's the point in doing it with water? You get the idea, right, Mata?
Yes, so I think the intention matters. If you intend to do that, but if you are constrained, you cannot.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ishwari Radha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In this same chapter, I was just recognizing how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying about hearing, that one should hear from the authorities, not from anyone else. But you have sometimes friends who share, some katha or whatever from other people who are not in Krishna consciousness. Is it okay to like say, okay, I already have my own, readings and my own books. I don't want to listen to what you have to, like, it's not nice, I guess, but how can you like decline, like, don't share these things with me. I'm not really interested.
Just out of curiosity, are they like very philosophically different, like Advaita schools or something like that?
Actually, I'm not sure. I don't know if I should mention a name. I don't want to offend.
Okay, fine. If that is the case, then you can just politely decline, saying that I already am following a path. So and I'm unable to maintain all the rules and regulations of my own path. So, maybe once I'm steady on that, then I can kind of, take some time to listen to your path. And you're not lying, but at the same time, it's not, if people are genuinely steady and sincere in their own path, which they are asking you to, they will say, yeah, this person is a person of faith, there is an adherence, and we respect that. But if there are some egoistic, some pushy people who just want to push you, then it's a different scenario to tackle. I hope that answers a little bit.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, because it is mentioned that Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata gurau tasyete katita hyartha prakashante mahatmanaha. That unto those who have implicit faith in Guru and Krishna, the purports of the revealed scriptures, are manifest to them. Otherwise, this sort of knowledge gathering of multiple sampradayas or might not actually help one on the path of devotion, which we can, Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I find that in our sampradaya, everything is clear cut. There's no if and or buts, But in other sampradayas, they're like, oh, you don't have to do this. It's okay. I'm like, that's not really following rules and regulation. How are you going to get bhakti?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Any other points, Ishwari Radhamataji, before we move on to the next person?
No problem. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Santosh?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance. I'll go Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu, I have a question in general, which was asked by another of my friend some time back. So we were discussing on taking prasadam, avoiding prasadam outside because it was not cooked with a good intention and energy. And my friend asked me then why we are taking raw vegetables from outside, because they might not be sowing with the same intention and energy, right? So I mean, honestly, I could not answer him at the time. I just want to understand where to draw the line with respect to with respect to taking food from outside.
Thank you. So when you, just to clarify, when you said prasadam outside, it's not necessarily prasadam, but it's cooked. Or prasadam as in like prasadam from a Shiva temple or prasadam from Balaji. It's not like that, correct?
No, it's not like that. Just from a hotel who has cooked non-onion, non-garlic food, but it's not cooked by devotees.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. When the intention of planting a seed happens, what is the intention is actually purified by Mother Earth, because even though the person whose intention, whatever be it, when they planted, strictly speaking, from the previous ages, we read in Bhagavad Gita that Brahmanas are in the mode of goodness, correct? Anybody disputing that? Kshatriyas in the mode of passion. Vaishyas in the mode of passion plus ignorance. And Shudras in the mode of ignorance. So in general, that is the category or the division of labor. So far, so good. Anybody having any problem? Now, would Brahmanas go and plant in the earth? Was it Brahmanas' job or Vaishya's job or Kshatriya's job? Vaishya's job, which means the planting is happening in the mode of passion and ignorance, even in the Vedic times. Correct? But the Mother Earth, so the Mother Earth will, and the sun will purify and produce the plants. The plants become fertile, and when they are cooked by those in the mode of different modes, then only those modes will start affecting. So Krishna is mentioning about foods in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, but he's not talking about agriculture in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, because agriculture by nature will happen in the mode of passion and ignorance. There is no way around it. But the cooking part is something that is more under the purview of different modes, and the results are into the different modes. Therefore, Krishna is saying that for those in the mode of goodness, the foods they like are fatty, juicy, and so on and so forth. In the mode of passion, it's very salty and pungent. And in the mode of ignorance, it is stale and it's cooked for a long time, so on and so forth. So that's where the division comes. Does it help answer, Santosh?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And there are circumstances where it is impossible to eat food which is offered to Krishna. There are emergencies, and a number of emergencies that can happen. You're traveling, or something will happen. Your whole family is sick, or husband and wife are super busy with work and they just couldn't have time to do. In those kind of exigent situations, getting food from outside, which is made of no onion, no garlic, and so on and so forth, and offering it to the deities and having it is okay. But that emergency, when it becomes a normal situation, there comes in the problem. Because then Krishna is not involved in the preparation of food at all. It is my own needs that are being concerned or catered about rather than needs of Krishna. So is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Questions, comments? All right. Should we go back to the 12th? To the 12th? Chapter 12.
Prabhu, I have a question on the offering part. So, say a neophyte devotee, he may not be preparing a food always thinking about Krishna or in bhakti. He may be doing it in ignorance or in passion also. So, in that case, if that food is offered to Krishna, is it also like there's no problem in taking that too? Like, my question is it okay to prepare it in mode of ignorance or passion and offer it to Krishna?
In mode of ignorance, it's practically difficult to prepare food because you are just indolent and lazy and so forth. But even if there is a touch of mode of ignorance, and even if there is mode of passion, by offering the food to Krishna, then the karma behind it is kind of eliminated. If it is done in the right spirit, yes. And obviously, when you talk of mode of passion and ignorance, I'm assuming there are no ingredients which are
not the ingredients, but I'm thinking like not very careful in preparing, right?
Yeah.
Not thoughtful that he's preparing it for Krishna or the Guru, but he's just doing it because he's been asked to do, right? So that was the intention.
That was okay, and that is in line with Krishna's statement in Bhagavad Gita. For those who are who are keeping track of the verses, it's 927. It's immediately following 926, which is Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. In the 927th verse, Krishna says, Yat karoshi yadashnashi, yat juhosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. He says that whatever you do, whatever you eat, he says, offer it to me first. So in that sense, the acharyas have explained that's not necessarily applicable to the bhakti yogis, but even those who are in the path of karma, which means they could be in the mode of passion and ignorance. For example, a Vaishya who's by nature in the mode of passion and ignorance, when he or she cooks food, then it is like that, but Krishna is giving the mandate to offer it to them. So that's perfectly okay, Sarvan.
So that can be accepted as a prasadam perfectly.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Right. If there are no more questions, then
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Dhanvid Pranam, Prabhuji. In chapter 11, the very first paragraph, we read that servitorship means constant engagement in some kind of service to the Lord. So could you elaborate more on this, and how can we ultimately achieve this?
So here Srila Rupa Goswami distinguishes, when you say I'm a servant, which means that, okay, what is the relationship between servant and master? So servant and master means I work and then I offer the fruits, but the offering of fruits is the binding contract between that particular relationship, which is being the master and servant. But Srila Rupa Goswami, he mentions that in bhakti, it is little more than that. It's a constant service to Krishna. And then he says the same thing in the Nectar of Instruction, that the essence of all activities is somehow or other, one is constantly absorbed in service of Krishna. Now, that's something that will not happen immediately. because it's a gradual process. But eventually that should be it. Because when you define servitorship, it can mean, Srila Rupa Goswami, Swati Mataji is very, very particular about the definitions. When he talks of something, he gives first the definition of what it means, and then he will give exception if needed, then he will follow it. So in this case, he's saying servitorship means it's little more than our regular understanding of servitorship. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Who was next? If there is no more questions, then we can get into the...
Next reading is Deepika.
Yes, Mataji, please do the entire section, hearing the revealed scriptures.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Further aspects of transcendental service, hearing the revealed scriptures. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, any book that gives enlightenment in the matter of advancing in devotional service is considered to be revealed scripture. Srila Madhvacharya has also defined revealed scriptures as referring to books such as the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Purans, Upanishads, Vedant, and any other literature written in pursuance of such revealed scriptures. In the Skand Puran, there is the statement, a person who is constantly engaged in reading literature and enunciating the cultivation of Vaishnava devotional service is always glorious in human society. And certainly Lord Krishna becomes pleased with him. A person who very carefully keeps such literature at home and offers respectful obeisances to it becomes freed from all sinful reactions and ultimately becomes worshipable by the demigods. It is also said to Narada Muni, my dear Narad, a person who writes Vaishnava literature and keeps such literature at home has Lord Narayana always residing in his house. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 13th chapter, verse 15, it is stated, Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedant philosophy. Any person who has become attached in some way or other to the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam cannot have any taste for reading any other literature. In other words, a person who has relished the transcendental bliss of Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be satisfied with mundane writings. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So this is something that we do, or rather we should try to do. I think within our society, we are indebted to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, for presenting to us the essence of revealed scriptures. And apart from that, we do have quite few other books. In fact, we can have a lot of books written by so many different authors. They are either the realizations of the authors themselves, like famous sannyasis or other exalted devotees, or they can be the translation of literatures. For example, there is a whole set of translation on Srila Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas and other works, for example. There are also poems in the form, some books which are written in the form of poems. So we have so many books, and somehow within ISKCON, we have the Srila Prabhupada's books as the preeminent books that we read. That's where the whole Bhakti Sastri program is, to give an excuse for us to read Prabhupada's books, Srila Prabhupada's books. Any questions on this? Because it can be a very engaged subheading or topic. Yes, Mata, Ishwari Radha Mata.
So Prabhu, we shouldn't really worry about reading other books other than, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita. Like if we understand these books, then maybe we can move on to the other books that the other acharyas wrote, right?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Srila Prabhupada said that, practically these 4 books that you so rightly mentioned are enough to give you a good knowledge or understanding of Krishna, which is the goal of why we are reading in the first place. When the goal becomes more of gathering knowledge, more of, okay, I need to read this book, I need to read that book, I need to do this. Garuda Puran makes a very interesting statement on this. Garuda Puran says that there are so many books and there are so many obstacles to reading books. To read these just 4 books, it's practically impossible. If you ask someone who said that I have read all the 4 books, like entire Bhagavatam, entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, and Bhagavad Gita once, forget multiple readings, I would be surprised to see a lot of devotees raise their hands, like immediately, even those who have been in ISKCON for a very, very long time. That's not an indictment or a criticism against those that who did not read. Perhaps they are involved in so many services and reading is not their natural thing. They have been involved in serving deities, for example, for 40, 50 years or whatever be it, and they are expert in their areas. And so by no means it's an indictment, even though Srila Prabhupada instructed us to read. But there are so many obstacles. And then Garuda Puran says that these books cannot be read in multiple lifetimes, and each of lifetime there are obstacles. Then the bigger question comes is, and what can I read, or how much can I read within the short lifespan I have? So when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, and more importantly, have faith. Yasya deve para bhakti yatade. Okay, Prabhupada said this, but let me check the other scripture or the other translation. And if they don't match, oh my God, is Prabhupada correct? You can see how reading other books without having faith in Prabhupada can actually become a very serious distraction rather than helping us. And then you will be like, start a little bit disillusioned with this whole thing. So even if there are opposing points on that, then my fundamental thing has been that, I'll kind of keep my faith in Prabhupada's books. So is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu, definitely.
Because ultimately, and the Garuda Puran says, it's a very interesting, I'll complete that. It says there are hundreds of books which cannot be read in many, many lifetimes. And in each lifetime, there are obstacles. Then what is the use of getting anxiety in saying that I have to read this book and that book and this and that, this, that. He says better to have faith in Guru's words, and that will be the essence of all scriptures. So just leaving the positive mind. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Who wants to do the small but extremely important residing in Mathura? Who's next, Anushree?
Next is Rupali.
All right, Mata.
Hare Krishna. Residing in Mathura, in the Varaha Puran, there is a statement praising the residential quarters of Mathura. Lord Varaha tells the men of earth, any person who becomes attracted to places other than Mathura will certainly be captivated by the illusory energy. In the Brahmananda Puran, it is said that all the results of traveling on all the pilgrimages within the 3 worlds can be achieved simply by touching the holy land of Mathura. In many Shastras, scriptures, it is said that simply by hearing, remembering, glorifying, desiring, seeing or touching the land Mathura, one can achieve all desires.
Thank you. We'll discuss more when we come to the last 5 verses on this particular topic. I think this is one topic that we will definitely discuss and then take questions. Next, 2 or 3 speakers, Anushree.
Okay, next is Timir, Gitamrita, and Rohini.
Oh, excellent. All right. Timir, Dr. Nandi, first 2 paragraphs, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat. Rendering service to devotees. In the Padma Puran, there is a nice statement praising the service of the Vaishnavas or devotees. In that scripture, Lord Shiva tells Parvati, "My dear Parvati, there are different methods of worship, and out of all such methods, the worship of the Supreme Person is considered to be the highest, but even higher than the worship of the Lord is the worship of the Lord's devotees." A similar statement is in the third canto, 7th chapter, verse 19 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me become a sincere servant of the devotees, because by serving them, one can achieve unalloyed devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord. The service of devotees diminishes all miserable material conditions and develops within one a deep devotional love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Gitamrita.
Haribol Gitamrita.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Please do.
In the Skanda Purana, there is a similar statement: persons whose bodies are marked with tilak, symbolizing the conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus, and who keep the leaves of tulsi on their heads, and whose bodies are always decorated with gopi chandan, even seen once, can help the seer be relieved from all sinful activities. A similar statement is found in the first canto, 19th chapter, verse 33 of Srimad Bhagavatam. There is no doubt about one's becoming freed from all reactions to sinful activities after visiting a devotee or touching his lotus feet. Touching his lotus feet or giving him a sitting place. Even by remembering the activities of such a Vaishnava, one becomes purified, along with one's whole family. And what then can be said of rendering direct service to him?
Thank you, Gitamrita. Next one. Next
for reading is Rohini, Santosh, then Smita.
In the Adi Purana, there is the following statement by Lord Krishna himself addressed to Arjuna: "My dear Partha, one who claims to be my devotee is not so. Only a person who claims to be the devotee of my devotee is actually my devotee. No one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. One must approach him through his pure devotees. Therefore, in the system of Vaishnav activities, the first duty is to accept the devotee as spiritual master, and then to render service unto him." Srila Rupa Goswami affirms that all the quotations given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from different scriptures are accepted by the great acharyas and devotees of the Lord.
Thank you. So this is a pretty important aspect that we can do. And Srila Rupa Goswami gives different verses from different scriptures on how it's much more easier to approach Krishna through the medium of his devotees rather than one trying to attain Krishna on one's own. It's practically impossible because Krishna is not attracted by anything that you have. Krishna's love for his devotees is so intense that he is willing to give up his own life. He's willing to give up his own reputation. He's willing to give up his own everything for his devotees. That is the love of Krishna that he has for his devotees. In fact, it's so profound. And there are stories in Bhagavatam and Mahabharata where the story from Mahabharata, I'm sure you know, but I'll just give it a little bit to highlight this aspect. Bhishma was the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army for a long time. In fact, for the 18 days of Mahabharata, the Pandavas had only one commander-in-chief, Drishtadyumna, but the commander-in-chief of the armies for Kauravas changed multiple times after the death of their commander-in-chief. And the first half of the first portion was actually Bhishma. And Bhishma was becoming a major obstacle. Arjuna was fighting, but he was not fighting as he would fight a normal person, because time and again he remembered about how Bhishma Dev was his grandfather and father at the same time. When Mother Kunti came back to Hastinapur after the death of Maharaj Pandu, it's mentioned that the kids would actually urinate and pass stools on the lap of Bhishma, and Bhishma would clean. It was such a poignant relationship, such a deep relationship that Arjuna had. And Arjuna was fighting, but he was not fighting to 120% of his capacity. He was somewhere short. Krishna was seeing this, and he was urging. At one point of time, Krishna became so disturbed because Bhishma was throwing arrows after arrows, and it was piercing different parts of Arjuna, and he was killing the Pandava army. And then at one point, Krishna said, forget it. And he took the wheel of the chariot, as we know, and he hurled towards Bhishma to kill him. And Bhishma, with open arms, was waiting for the Lord to kill him. But Arjuna realized the enormity of the slight deviation from Krishna's instruction. And he immediately jumped off the chariot and he held on to Krishna's lotus feet. Like, please don't, oh my Lord, please don't kill him. The whole world will ridicule you. The whole world will speak of your infamy, of that supreme absolute truth who broke his own word of not lifting any weapon on the Mahabharata war. And technically speaking, the wheel was not a weapon, but still it would be an infamy or a black spot on Krishna's reputation. But Krishna didn't care. That's the beauty. Krishna said, I didn't care. He was ready to go and kill Bhishma. But Arjuna, he just caught hold, and it's mentioned in Mahabharata, even though Arjuna, the greatest warrior, was clutching the lotus feet or the lotus ankles of the supreme absolute truth, the Lord dragged him 10 paces. He was he walked 10 paces with Arjuna clinging onto his feet, about to kill Bhishma. And then when he was pleaded by Arjuna, he stopped. He said, fine. And then Arjuna, even though he was with a heavy heart, then he used Shikhandi as a shield and killed Bhishma. So Krishna doesn't care. He's so many places in Bhagavatam it is mentioned about Krishna's love for his devotees. So Krishna really doesn't need anything from us. There's nothing about us that we can possibly impress Krishna with. But if we love his devotees, then Krishna takes such a merciful attitude towards us. This person likes my devotees, therefore I will like him. And that's how, through the via medium of a spiritual master, it becomes easy to obtain Krishna. Otherwise, it's next to impossible to obtain Krishna. And the other aspect is we have this song, Ibaro Karuna Karo Vaishnava Gosha. And it's like, in that also it is mentioned of how just by seeing the Vaishnava, one's sins are destroyed, but only it is destroyed after a prolonged association in Ganges. And there is a Bhagavatam verse, it doesn't come, I don't remember here on top of my head, but if I pull it up, I'll let you know as well. Any questions on this? This is an important verse. And even within the society, as much as possible, we of course take initiation from the spiritual master, but with others also one should maintain as much as possible the friendly relationship, because Vaishnavas, you never know who is dear to the Lord and who's not. Everybody is dear in one sense, but whose proximity is much closer to the Lord versus who's not. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, Rambabu Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have a question on residing in holy place, Mathura. Should I ask now or should I wait?
No, you can ask now. You can.
Prabhuji, so generally we say that wherever devotees are there, wherever ISKCON temples are there, so they are considered non-different from holy places because we do the devotional service to Lord in those places. But at the same time, we see many acharyas, they have set an example by staying in holy places, be it Six Goswamis or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even Bhakti Vinod Thakur also, he retired in Mayapur. So I was wondering, are we missing something that will expedite our devotional advancement? Or, should we stick to whatever Prabhupada, Prabhupada mode is different in preaching. So should we stick to this and then proceed this way? Or should we plan later? How one should approach towards that?
So, before we get to the question, before we get to the answer to the question, which is a little more specific, the point here is residing in Mathura, and there is a possibility that many of us might not be able to reside in Mathura. So acharyas have said, for those who are unable to reside in Mathura in person, you can always mentally reside in Mathura. You can think of Mathura and Vrindavan. You can read about the travel guides, and you can mentally visit the holy places where the Lord performed his pastimes, and that's equivalent as well. So just to get it out of the way, to eliminate any possibility that we are not able to follow. Now, coming back to your question about the great acharyas residing in the holy dham. Srila Prabhupada, he left Vrindavan when at the age of 69, and he traveled all over the world. He suffered a heart attack in New York City, and the devotees prayed for him. There was no guarantee that he would actually pass away in Vrindavan, or he would leave his body in Vrindavan, because it was really, from a statistical perspective, here was a sadhu from India who never traveled any place before, didn't step out of India, and now he's ready to step all over the world. Statistically speaking, it would have been anybody who would said, what is the high chance that he would leave his body anywhere outside? It was a possibility. But we can see how Srila Prabhupada, when he gave everything for Krishna, but still, Krishna made sure that he left, he kind of had the final pastime in Vrindavan. The point I'm trying to make is that Srila Prabhupada was interested in fulfilling the order of his spiritual master. It was less important to him whether he was, or he would make his final journey in Vrindavan. So our mood is something to that effect. If you have your guru's orders to stay at a particular place and do some service, that takes precedence over whether we are overly concerned if we have to stay in Vrindavan or not. Does that help? When you mentioned about exalted devotees living in Vrindavan, And we can also give example of many devotees who never visited Vrindavan. Srivas Thakur, there is no story of his visiting Vrindavan. Or Advaita Acharya, again, no mention of his visiting Vrindavan. And many exalted devotees or Vaishnava devotees, they never visited Vrindavan, but they were close associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. So, and Mahaprabhu himself wanted to go to Vrindavan. He just visited once. Because it's the Acharya specifically mentioned, they didn't mention so much about Jagannath Puri. They mentioned about Vrindavan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan. He is a supreme absolute truth. Nobody could have stopped him from staying in Vrindavan. But he stayed in Jagannath Puri. Of course, there are external and internal reasons why he stayed. But to counter the narrative that everybody of our acharyas were in Vrindavan, there were many who weren't either. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you.
So serving the order of spiritual master is more important than anything else.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. And if serving the order of the spiritual master is going to Vrindavan, then all the better. But like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the 6 Goswamis to go and serve in Vrindavan, so which they did.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Rupali Mataji, I think this should make you happy.
Santosh?
No, Rupali Mataji, are you there?
So yeah, should I read that?
Yeah, so this is a small one, and Santosh can read the next one. So you can read that, Mataji.
Okay. Serving the Lord according to one's position. In the Padma Puran, there is a statement that one should perform the ceremonies of the Lord according to one's financial position. Everyone should observe the different ceremonies and celebrations of the Lord by all means.
So even though you have the money and mentally I'll do it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is okay. This one is something performing in Kartik is pretty common. I mean, we all do that, and it's also mentioned in the scriptures. Then observing festival celebrating the Lord's activities, we should have, for example, Gopashtami and so on and so forth, and Govardhana Puja and so on and so forth are activities that are mentioned here. Serving deity with great devotion. Okay, this we can read. This and the next two we can read. All right, whoever is next.
Serving the deity with great devotion. It is said in the Adi Purana, a person who is constantly engaged in chanting the holy name and who feels transcendental pleasure being engaged in devotional service is certainly awarded the facilities of devotional service and is never given just mukti, liberation. Mukti means liberation from material contamination. When liberated, one does not have to take birth again in the material world. The impersonalists desire to merge into spiritual existence to end their individual existence. But according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, Mukti is only the beginning of one's becoming situated in his normal condition. The normal condition of every living entity is to be engaged in devotional service of the Lord. From the statement of Adi Purana, it appears that a devotee is satisfied simply with being engaged in devotional service. He does not aspire for any liberation from material conditional life. In other words, anyone who is engaged in devotional service is not in the material condition of life, although he may appear so.
Thank you. Okay. All right, this is reading Srimad Bhagavatam. These two paragraphs, please.
Then we have Smita and Nitish.
Srimad Bhagavatam is the desired tree of Vedic wisdom. Veda itself means the aggregate of knowledge, and whatever knowledge is required for human society is perfectly presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are different branches of knowledge in the Vedic writings, including sociology, politics, medicine, and military art. All these and other branches of knowledge are perfectly described in the Vedas. So, as far as spiritual knowledge is concerned, that is also perfectly described there. And Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the ripened fruit of this desire-fulfilling tree of the Vedas. A tree is honored by the production of its fruit. For example, a mango tree is considered very valuable because it produces the king of all fruits, the mango. When the mango fruit becomes ripened, it is the greatest gift of that tree. And Srimad Bhagavatam is similarly held to be the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree. And as ripened fruit becomes more relishable when first touched by the beak of a parrot or shuka, Srimad Bhagavatam has become more relishable by being delivered through the transcendental mouth of Shukadeva Goswami. Srimad Bhagavatam should be received in disciplic succession without any breakage. When a ripened fruit comes from the upper part of the tree onto the ground by the process of being handed down from a higher branch to a lower branch by persons in the tree, the fruit does not break. Srimad Bhagavatam, when received in the parampara system or disciplic succession, will likewise remain unbroken. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that the disciplic succession or parampara is the way of receiving transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge must come down through the disciplic succession through authorized persons who know the real purpose of the Shastra.
Thank you. So Srimad Bhagavatam is something that we all have easy access by the mercy of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In fact, his greatest contribution to this world was his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. No, I think even other Gaudiya Vaishnavas not within ISKCON still have Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam set, because it's a monumental task that His Divine Grace did for us. So we are deeply grateful to him for that. And Bhagavatam gives the essence. It's one verse or one work that's enough for God realization. All right. So next one.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended that one learn Srimad Bhagavatam from the mouth of the self-realized person called Bhagavatam. Bhagavata means in relationship with the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. So the devotee is sometimes called Bhagavatam, and the book that is in relationship with devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also called Bhagavatam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended that in order to relish the real taste of Srimad Bhagavatam, one should take instruction from the person Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is relishable even by a liberated person. Shukadeva Goswami admitted that although he was liberated from within the very womb of his mother, it was only after relishing Srimad Bhagavatam that he became a great devotee. Thus, one who is desirous of advancing in Krishna consciousness should relish the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam through the discussions of authorized devotees. In Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, first chapter, verse 9, Shukadeva Goswami admits that although he was very much attracted by the impersonal Brahman, when he heard the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of his father, Vyasadeva, he became more attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam. The idea is that Vyasadeva was also a self-realized soul, and his mature contribution of transcendental knowledge was delivered directly to Shukadeva Goswami in the manner indicated.
Thank you. Any questions? We have heard enough glories of Bhagavatam. So, all right. Associating with advanced devotees.
Now we have Tarun Prabhu, then Pratibha Mataji.
Tarun, please complete the whole section, associating with advanced devotees.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you. Associating with advanced devotees. The importance of discussing Srimad Bhagavatam in the society of pure devotees was explained by Shaunaka Muni during the meeting at Naimisharanya in the presence of Sutta Goswami. Sut Goswami confirmed that if someone is fortunate enough to associate with a pure devotee of the Lord, even for a moment, that particular moment is so valuable that even those pious activities that can promote one to the heavenly planets or give liberation from material miseries cannot compare to it. In other words, those who are attached to Srimad Bhagavatam do not care for any kind of benefit derived from elevation to the higher planetary kingdoms, or for the liberation which is conceived of by impersonalists. As such, the association of pure devotees is so transcendently valuable that no kind of material happiness can compare to it. In Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya, there is a conversation between Prahlad Maharaj and his father Hiranyakashipu, in which Hiranyakashipu addresses Prahlad in this way: My dear son, association is very important. It acts like a crystal stone, which will reflect anything which is put before it. Similarly, if we associate with the flower-like devotees of the Lord, and if our hearts are crystal clear, then certainly the same action will be there. Another example given in this connection is that if a man is potent and if a woman is not diseased, then by their conjugation there will be conception. In the same way, if the recipient of the spiritual knowledge and the deliverer of spiritual knowledge are sincere and bona fide, there will be good results.
Thank you. 1 minute. So one of the questions that usually comes about in this connection is, Prabhu, you have Bhagavad Katha, or Bhagavad recitation that is going on, and they are not necessarily ISKCON, and should we hear those kind of recitations? Did you get any questions like that before? Yeah. Because ultimately they're also talking about Krishna, is the same Bhagavatam. So what's wrong in hearing? Actually, Sanatana Goswami wants us, saying that I'm just trying to remember that words. If somebody can throw that. Utam Harikatamritam. Okay. The verse is not coming on top of my head, but in the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya or Hari Bhakti Vilas, he says that that milk, when it is touched by the lips of the serpents, it becomes poisonous. So even those whose intentions are wicked, when they speak Bhagavatam, their recitation will not be effective. It will not have the same potency because their angle of vision is different. And usually when you recite Bhagavatam for money or for a livelihood, then you become subjugated to the person who's reciting or who's paying you the money. That person might say, skip 3 cantos. We don't want to hear all that stuff. Jump directly into little more juicy parts of Bhagavatam. Or, make it really quick. Or our society or sect doesn't believe in these aspects or these avatars or these parts of Bhagavatam, just don't mention them. You can see how the reciter of Bhagavatam becomes quickly bound up because of financial obligations to these kinds of people. In fact, the very Bhagavatam was spoken by Shuka, and Shuka is so perfectly aligned. When Maharaj Parikshit came, he was the emperor of the whole universe, and Shuka was just a Digambar sannyasi who didn't even have any clothes. He was completely like unattached to anything. And the juxtaposition of these two personalities couldn't be more different. The emperor of the whole world versus a sannyasi who is not even having clothes on, and who had no fixed place of residence. He would stay at the householder's house till the cow was milked, which means that he would take a little milk from the householder and he would leave that place. You can't have more two contrasting personalities, yet Bhagavatam was spoken on that platform. So, and the interesting thing about the Bhagavatam, in the 12th canto, after delivering the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami is not waiting for the photo session. All right, let's all come together, all the sages assemble, we'll take a picture, or, where is the press people? They didn't come yet, we'll do the coverage, have an interview. The Facebook streaming kind of got messed up in Canto 6. So what can be done to? He just delivered the entire Bhagavatam. He said to the king that, I have delivered you the Bhagavatam. He walked away. He didn't even wait for Takshaka to come and kill the king. So that is the essence of Bhagavatam. So when we hear that, Bhagavatam is being spoken in so many societies, at least in the West, fortunately, in one sense, we are saved from that, because in India, it happens in every household, every street, and everybody goes around saying we have a Bhagavad Saptaha and this person coming from this mutt. One has to be careful, because you will not get the desired effect of Bhagavatam. We'll come to the next section. So far, so good. Any questions, comments, concerns? Well, we see a few. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to share something about this.
Please.
Before coming to Krishna consciousness, I remember we used to listen to so many different swamis and stuff. And at the end of every lecture, I couldn't understand. What is the instruction? There's no instruction. Just, be good and just do your duty, and that's it. I'm like, that's it? There has to be something more. And I was never attracted to that. And then when I came to Krishna consciousness and I heard Prabhupada clear instructions, you follow these principles, you chant 16 rounds, you do all these things. And now I see, I'm like, oh my God, these people are missing out. They don't understand. They don't understand to ask these questions.
Right. So. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that thoughts. Other questions? So we'll do chanting the holy name of the Lord. I think that's the last. Then we'll living Mathura, and then we will stop there. If there are no further questions. Okay. All right. So who's next?
I just have a small reflection.
Yes, please, Santosh.
Just on the lines of Ishwari Radha Mataji mentioned, I was having the same perception, like before I came in contact with ISKCON or Hare Krishna movement. Like I was going to all other temples back in South India, so there they were never told the reason. Like we go to festivals and whenever we want good grades and we want to cross the exams, we go to temple and either break the coconuts or do 108 pradakshnas and again go back to our duties. And once again the obstacle come, we go again. But after after getting in contact with Krishna consciousness and understanding, started reading the Bhagavad Gita, then that's where actually I see that this kind of perception is missing across India, and that's which is very unique and which is clear in ISKCON.
Thank you for sharing, Santosh. All right.
Okay, now we have Pratibha Mataji.
Okay. The importance of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare is very strongly stressed in the second canto, first chapter, verse 11 of Srimad Bhagavatam in the following way. So Sukadeva Goswami tells Maharaja Parikshit, my dear king, if one is spontaneously attached to the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it is to be understood that he has attained the highest perfectional stage. It is specifically mentioned that the karmis who are aspiring after the fruitive results of the activities, the salvationists who are aspiring to become one with the Supreme Person, and the yogis who are aspiring after mystic perfections can achieve the results of all perfectional stages simply by chanting the Mahamantra. So Dev uses the word nirnitam, which means it has already been decided. He was a liberated soul and therefore could not accept anything that was not conclusive. So Sukhdev Goswami especially stresses that it has already been concluded that one who has come to the stage of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra with determination and steadiness must be considered to have already passed the trials of fruitive activities, mental speculation, and mystic yoga. The same thing is confirmed in the Adi Puran by Krishna. While addressing Arjuna, he says, anyone who is engaged in chanting my transcendental name must be considered to be always associating with me. And I may tell you frankly that for such a devotee, I become easily purchased.
Amazing.
In the Padma Purana, it is...
So okay. Next reader, Nadesh. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have Ram Babu Prabhu.
I think Vishal Gunath Prabhu is there in between, Mataji.
Yes.
Yeah.
Vishal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Very well.
In the Padma Puran, it is also stated the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is present only on the lips of a person who has for many births worshipped Vasudev. It is further said in the Padma Purana, there is no difference between the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself. As such, the holy name is as perfect as the Lord himself in fullness, purity, and eternity. The holy name is not a material sound vibration, nor has it any material contamination. The holy name cannot therefore be chanted offenselessly by one who has failed to purify his senses. In other words, materialistic senses cannot properly chant the holy names of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But by adopting this chanting process, one is given a chance to actually purify himself so that he may very soon chant offenselessly. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended that everyone chant the Hare Krishna mantra just to cleanse the dust from the heart. If the dust of the heart is cleansed away, then one can actually understand the importance of the holy name. For persons who are not inclined to clean the dust from their hearts and who want to keep things as they are, it is not possible to derive the transcendental result of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. One should therefore be encouraged to develop his service attitude toward the Lord, because this will help him to chant without any offense. And so, under the guidance of a spiritual master, the disciple is trained to render service and at the same time chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. As soon as one develops his spontaneous service attitude, he can immediately understand the transcendental nature of the holy names of the Mahamantra.
Thank you. So I think it will be seeming like a broken record to mention the glories of chanting the names and the importance of chanting the names of Krishna. But repetition is one way to keep something in the forefront. And if you really want something to be entering the mind, then you repeat that. Of all the things that are available in this world, that are effective in this world, that quickly can give or guarantee success, is chanting the names of Krishna. And we as devotees do the very best we can to make space, to make time, to gather the sincerity within our heart, and to gather the discipline and self-control to chant the names with as much attention, with faith and with attachment. As possible, given our situation. And that will help us, very rapidly in our spiritual life. And one other nugget I found in Srila Prabhupada's books, especially reading Bhagavad Gita, was Krishna was saying at many places, he says, think of me. Manmana bhavamat bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratyani priyosime. And he says, maye manadhastva and mayi buddhim nivesha. There are many places Krishna is saying, think of me. And Srila Prabhupada gives a very hopeful statement that he says that when one is chanting the names of Krishna, then one is thinking of Krishna. So chanting and thinking becomes synonymous. In the beginning stages, you might not find that connection. You might not find the fact that my lips are chanting, my ears partially hearing, one of them is hearing, other is not, half of the ear is hearing, 1.5 is somewhere else. Mind, I don't even know where it is. It's just gone all over the place. And it's, how can I think, or how am I thinking of Krishna when I'm chanting? And the connection might not be apparent. But as we take faith in Srila Prabhupada's words, saying that, chanting is also thinking. And it's mentioned in multiple places. If you think that it's mentioned incidentally or a very contextually specific place, no, Srila Prabhupada mentions it multiple times within the Bhagavad Gita, that chanting is equal to thinking. So if that one activity can be given reference, and if the management of a temple can help facilitate that one activity, and encourage that one activity, the congregation can become really strong, and it's one of those primary irreplaceable activities for any sadhaka or any community or congregation. Any questions, any comments before we go to the last one? And then all right, we'll do the last one, and then we can.
Okay. Now we have Ram Babu Prabhu reading.
Thank you, Mataji. Living in Mathura, in Padma Purana, in the Padma Purana, there is a statement about the importance of living.
Okay, Ram Babu Prabhu, we cannot hear you. Either nobody can hear me, or we cannot. Everybody cannot hear Ram Babu Prabhu. Which is it?
We cannot hear Ram Babu.
All right. Thank you for
liberated stage. After attaining this liberated stage, one has to become engaged in devotional service to the Lord. After attainment of the Brahma Bhuta liberation stage, one can further advance to engagement in devotional service. So this attainment of transcendental loving service to the Lord is the goal of life, and it can be achieved very easily for one who lives in Mathura Mandala, even for a few seconds. It is further said, who is that person who will not agree to worship the land of Mathura? Mathura can deliver all the desires and ambitions of the fruitive workers and of salvationists who desire to become one with Supreme Brahman. Certainly, Mathura will deliver the desires of the devotees who simply aspire to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic literature, it is also stated how wonderful it is that simply by residing in Mathura, even for one day, one can achieve a transcendental loving attitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This land of Mathura must be more glorious than Vaikuntha Dhama, the kingdom of God. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So in the next session, we will discuss the 5 potent forms of devotional service. And we usually have a mnemonic in our Bhakti Sastri group, and the mnemonic is ABCDE. So A stands for Association of Devotees, B stands for Bhagavatam, C stands for chanting, D stands for deity worship, and E stands for entering Vrindavan. We couldn't come up with a Vrindavan item and E, so we just said entering Vrindavan. So those 5 potent forms will be discussed in the next class. But before we kind of discuss about the next class, any questions, any comments, any concerns? anything we need to talk about?
I want to confirm about the first homework. It's based on the first 6 chapters, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the due date for submission?
So the due date for submission is, I think, was mentioned, Mataji, in the
August 5th.
August 5th. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Ankita. Rambabu Prabhu had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question is regarding the hearing process. So it is said that one has to hear and then one has to contemplate and try to apply what one has heard and then get the realization. But most of the times, for me, it just stops at hearing or reading the books. Of course, occasionally there is some contemplation comes, but mostly nothing transforms into realization. So, I mean, how should we improve that, Prabhu? Are there any practical tips one should adopt in the daily life?
Rambabu Prabhu, thank you for that very candid question. Really appreciate your candor. Oftentimes, when we read, I think if the devotees agree and if they want, then we can have a whole session on how to read Srila Prabhupada's books. But I'll give
Yes, Prabhu, I think it's a good idea. Very good.
Thank you. Sure. If the devotees can chime in, then we'll have probably in this semester sometime on the next semester. When we read the Srimad Bhagavatam or when we read Bhagavad Gita, we are entering into a very mysterious, magical world of Sri Krishna, and where all the constructs of how we learn knowledge of this world might or might not be applicable. There is a certain pattern of academic success. The young members of the audience, like Monisha, or Ryan, or Mahabhav, or Geetamrita, or Anushri, they might attest to, and they have a pattern of how they approach their studies and how they excel at what they do. Well, when you come to the spiritual aspect, oftentimes there are doubts that plague. I just read yesterday and I don't remember anything. Is it just me, or sometimes you get that question? Yeah, Shri Radha Mataji is honest. Thank you. Or, why is it that if I don't read once, then really, the Lord's pastime should be dancing in my mind, and they should be like happening all over the place. But my mind is just thinking of pizza or ice cream or whatever you want to choose. One way to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and I asked my spiritual master, how should I read Prabhupada's books? And he said that you should read Srila Prabhupada's books as if you are sitting at his lotus feet. So the first task or the first object is, how is my own attitude when I'm reading Prabhupada's books? It should be at least venerable, respectful. I won't approach the books with a preconceived notion that I know, but I'm really inquisitive. I'm eager to know. And I can ask questions based on after assimilating what I heard, but not right from the word go. So there is the attitude, then there is the content. There is the attitude, there is the association, and then there is the content. If the attitude and association is set, the content comes easy. But if I go for content first and my attitude and association is missing, then it becomes a little difficult and confusing. Is that helpful, Rambabu? Which I've given a nutshell because we just have 3 more minutes before we can wrap up. But does that help?
Yes, Prabhuji.
As I said, a whole class can be given on that, but in the interest of time, I just gave it in a nutshell.
Yeah, sure, Prabhuji. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Prabhu, you said attitude and association leads to what?
There are three aspects, which is attitude, which is association, and then the content. So if you have the attitude and you have the association, then the content can be easily, or in that setting, it's much more easier to understand or absorb. Parikshit Maharaj, when he heard Bhagavatam, he had that attitude, that desperation, and the completely surrendered state, as in like, I'm no longer the king. I'm just a beggar. I have no royal clothes. I don't command armies. I'm just waiting to to hear from Parikshit Maharaj. So he had the attitude. Then the association came. Maharaj Parikshit and Shukdev Goswami came. All the sages were assembled. Then the content became much more easily relishable in that particular arena. And that's what is mentioned in Bhagavatam as well. If you pull up Bhagavatam, somebody can project 3:25:25, third canto, 25th chapter, 25th verse. If people don't have, let me share my screen as well. We can just do that as well. Give me 1 minute. Actually, you can look it up, and it's fine. It's fine. In the interest of time, I'll 3:25:25. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana gata tad doshanadashva porgavatmi shraddha ratir bhaktiranukramishita. So you can see what's the end goal of reading, and then what is the way to achieve. All right, we'll have a break. We have like a 4-week break between now and the next class, because we do have the LA Rath Yatra, and then followed by SF Rath Yatra, followed by Janmashtami. So this is like in one succession after next. So we'll meet each other on the 28th of August, which will be the next date for our Bhakti Shastri class. So I'm hoping and praying that you complete the homework during this time. I am hoping and praying that you reread or catch up with whatever we read so far. And we can, as usual, discuss questions. If for some reason you cannot attend the classes, then you can always post the questions in the WhatsApp group, and then we can attend when we have the class next. Is it okay? Manisha, all good?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, all good. That sounds good.
Okay, Mahabhav.
Yes, Prabhuji. Sounds good.
Yes, Devika Mata. All right. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you that in spite of having a poor teacher, you still are willing to read Prabhupada's books. And the credit goes to each and every one of you for making this sankalpa, or saying the intention, stating the intention that I want to read Prabhupada's books. And by reading the literature given by our acharyas, our intelligence becomes strong, really strong. Because if that intelligence, which is not deep-rooted in philosophy, is not there, then after a stage, what happens is chanting of Hare Krishna becomes mindless and meaningless. I'm chanting every day the same thing. What's the big deal? Or I'm having so many doubts, and my mind is not being very strictly fixed in the Siddhanta. And that is really useful for the long term. In the short term, it might seem a pain, but in the long term, when our mind becomes stronger and stronger, then you become, our goal is to become lifetime devotees. We are not here to have a 10-year plan, and then after that, I did my devotional service, and then now I can do whatever I want to do for the rest. No, that was till my last breath. I want to be a devotee, and I want to remember Krishna, and that counts. After all the thing that we have done throughout our life, at the end of life, then all these things will come. And Rambhava Prabhu, at that time, whatever you read, Krishna will actually force those things to appear, and doesn't go in vain. Though right now it might seem it doesn't make a difference in my life. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for each and every one of you. And I will see you on August 28th. Vancha Kalpa, Thruvayascha, Kripa Sindhu, Patitanam Pavanebhyo.
Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Thank you, Prabhu.
No,
Hare
thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.